I'm Jeremiah Dooley, and I'm joined here on stage by Justin, who's here to talk about extending our VMware operations into Azure, specifically how to embrace the cloud and kind of stay sane in the process. And Justin and I have spent a lot of time over the last few weeks talking with customers about this idea of taking what I've invested in from an operational standpoint and then pushing that into Azure so that we can get the best of both worlds. One of the new tools that we have to be able to work on this with customers is the Azure VMware Solution. So Justin, introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about what the Azure VMware Solution is.
Sure. So my name is Justin Jakowski. I work on a team inside of Azure called the Global Black Belts. We are responsible for taking to market some of these newer solutions from Microsoft, and Azure VMware Solutions happens to be one of those services. Azure VMware Solutions really at its core is a way to run native VMware inside of Azure. So it's a great platform for customers who want to keep some things the same while adopting some cloud services as they go forward.
Awesome. Okay, so at its core, it is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's a way to be able to run VMware on bare metal as an Azure service, to be able to deploy it through the Azure portal. So I can understand from a technical standpoint how that lays out. My question to you is, why would Microsoft be interested in doing this? I mean, why would we, as a cloud services company, why would it be important for us to be able to deploy a bare metal service for customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And frankly, there are so many VMs today that are still running in VMware's data centers on premises. They're running in customers' data centers and co-location facilities. And customers are looking for a really easy way to move those VMs into the cloud, and running those natively in VMware provides a great option for customers to be able to do that. It's not the right option for everyone. IaaS is still an option, but this is a great option for customers who want to keep some things the same. So for example, if they want to continue to use the same backup tool that they're using today, they can do that in this environment very easily by bringing that backup tool with them. All of the operational things that they've created on premises, from a monitoring perspective and escalation of alerts into their ticketing systems and things like that. All of those things can stay the same in this solution. They can bring those things with them into this environment and continue to maintain the same operations that they've had in the past.
Gotcha. So it's essentially just a VMware environment. All of the tools that they've been using on premises today inside their VMware environments, whether that's first-party tools from VMware, the vRealize, any of those tools, that'll all work just fine?
Yeah, absolutely. First-party VMware tools from the VRA suite, VROps, Site Recovery Manager from VMware, which is their disaster recovery tool. All of those things work just fine, as well as third-party tools like Zerto or Veeam or Commvault. Some of these tools that even require you to install code on the ESXi nodes themselves can also be run in this environment very easily.
That's interesting. Let's talk about that for just a second. So some of these tools, Zerto is one that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Some of these tools actually not just require you to install code on the ESXi host, but you have to have elevated privileges. You have to have root access to be able to do that. As a general rule, giving root access to customers inside a managed environment is a terrible idea.
Yes.
How do we put in place a way to be able to protect customers from themselves and be able to provide a fully managed service while still giving them the ability to use those types of applications?
Yeah, so very similar to the way we do just-in-time access inside of Azure. For IaaS VMs, we have a very similar function in Azure VMware Solutions, AVS, that allows customers to elevate their credentials to the point where they can install the code that they need to install, and then de-escalate those privileges at the end so that they don't do something to shoot themselves in the foot. So it's a great way to have the best of both worlds. We can install the code that we need, get access to the applications that we want to utilize in the environment, and still maintain the integrity of the environment from an operational perspective, by retaining the span of control.
Awesome. So if I have a customer who's using all VMware on premises today, and they want to be able to spin up a new data center, right? It's not even necessarily a public cloud play. It's I need a second VMware environment that's not inside my data center. And it would be great if I could pay for those nodes as I spin them up, that sort of thing. Then this would be the perfect environment for them, because really they can continue using everything from an operational standpoint. Now, what happens if I have a customer who sees that as a good first step, but then looks at the entire catalog inside Azure of the services that we have to offer and says, I'd really like to be able to figure out a way to transition from one to the other. I want to start with my VMware side of things, but there are going to be either automation tools or services that I want to be able to bring in from the Azure catalog to be able to deploy next to my VMware environment. Give me an example of how we would help a customer with that transition from, or even give them the ability to manage from both perspectives, from a VMware standpoint and from an Azure standpoint.
Yeah, that's actually really, really key, because obviously we want our customers to use these services, but continue their journey into the cloud over time, right? So not just stopping with moving into VMware, but so obviously a great example of this would be the connectivity that we've made between the private cloud services that we offer in Azure VMware Solutions and Azure VNets. We have basically allowed customers to pin up, as part of this service, it's actually included in the service, an express route circuit that ties back this private cloud environment to Azure. And across that express route, we can really take advantage of any services that can be injected into an Azure VNet. So as an example, standing up an app service on the front end to be my web server or my layer 7 firewall, and then maybe letting my application run inside of Azure VMware Solutions, right? So as an example, maybe I have a very old Windows Server 2003 app that someone in my company wrote and then left the company, and of course this never happens in our customers, right? But we don't want to change it. In fact, we don't even want to change the underlying virtual hardware that the VM is running on, because we're afraid it will break. We can move a server like that or an application set like that into Azure VMware Solutions. But let the front end of that be an app service that runs inside of Azure, has a layer 7 firewall, may have traffic manager in front of it for load balancing, may be distributed across multiple data centers or Azure regions. And so it's a great way to modernize pieces of my application while maintaining the integrity of the pieces of the application that I can't change right away.
Very cool. And so that introduces the challenge of, at some point I'm managing VMware and at some point I'm managing Azure.
Yes.
And when I talk to customers, a lot of them are worried about, for some indefinite amount of time, having to run two completely different IT operations, right? Having to have two different skill sets. I need to have my Azure people or my cloud people, and then I've got my on-premises VMware people.
Yep.
If you could, one of the coolest things that I've seen about this solution is the idea that the management viewpoint of that is completely up to the customer. That
Sure.
if they want to be able to manage the VMware environment from an Azure perspective, or if they want to be able to manage that VMware environment from a VMware perspective, we're pretty unique in how it is that we've surfaced that out to the customer. Do you have the ability to show us a quick demo and just look at the VM construct itself and show that from both sides of the operational mirror?
Yeah, of course, happy
Awesome.
to. Yeah, let me flip over to my screen here. So what I'm actually showing right now is inside of the Azure portal, we have a service called Cloud Simple Virtual Machines. This is basically a list of all of the VMs that I have running in my private cloud.
So these are VMware VMs.
They are indeed VMware
Okay.
VMs, yep.
But we're
So
looking at them through the Azure portal.
we are looking at them through the Azure portal. So I'm going to choose one of my test VMs here. Anyone who's worked inside of Microsoft for a while may know we have aliases for our email. Mine happens to be Jujacko, so all my VMs are named Jujacko. We'll give it a second to pop up here. And we can see some interesting things about this VM right away. We can see the size of the VM, how many cores and how much memory it has, whether or not it has public DNS, or we have a IPv6 IP address on this one right now. But I can see my CPU, my network information, my disk, IOPS and bytes that are running in and out of this VM, just like I would be able to see in a native Azure VM. And if I click down here on the size as an example, I can do some very interesting things with this VM. For example, like some of the same things that I would be able to do from a vSphere perspective. We'll give it just a second to populate. Hopefully it's not going to fail on me like we'll have some demo magic.
Well, the point, there it is. It finally did come up. But the idea here being, all of the management that you're doing right now looks exactly like it would look if it were a native Azure infrastructure as a service VM.
Correct.
So if you're comfortable in Azure and you've done this before and you need to be able to spin up whether it's nodes or whether it's the individual virtual machines or operate on them, change the size of the disk, change the size of the instance itself, you can do all of that native from the Azure side?
Absolutely.
And we will push that back through into VMware.
Yes, so we've done some very cool things from an integration perspective between the ARM API, which is the Azure Resource Manager API, and the vSphere APIs in vCenter. And what we've done is we're able to basically pass commands back and forth. And so if I needed to increase the number of cores or the amount of memory that's provisioned on this VM, I can easily do that with these slider bars here. I can hit the save button down here at the bottom, and that would actually send those commands right through to vSphere.
And that's all real time? There's no delay between what vSphere knows and what we visualize through on the Azure side?
I mean, of course there's a small delay, but yeah, it happens in essence in real time. So yes, as I change these things and commit them, I would be able to see those exact things flow through. We can take a look at a different VM here to see a little bit of a different view as well. In fact, why don't I just, instead of doing that, why don't I just add a new VM?
Okay.
And we can actually walk through the process of adding a virtual machine in the Azure portal, and we can actually see that VM show up on the VMware side.
Sure, let's give it a shot.
Yeah. Wow, of course. So we'll, one quick second while this comes up, we'll let this go.
Do you have the ability to look at the vSphere side of that? Because I'm sure there's bunches of people who are watching who recognize vCenter and recognize the user interface that they would use on a day-to-day basis to be able to manage that. Does it look any different? Are there any changes in the vCenter that they would use to be able to talk to an AVS environment versus the vCenter that they'd be able to use to talk to their on-premises?
No, in fact, this is actually what the vSphere UI looks like as well. So we can actually see exactly the same UI in vCenter. So here's that same exact VM that I was looking at before, running inside of vSphere, just like I was running it inside of the Azure portal. So exactly the same VMs. I can right-click on those and edit settings just like I would in a classic VMware environment, and I would have the same abilities that I would have inside of any vCenter environment to grow or shrink this VM, to turn it on or off, to change the vSAN policy, really anything that I want to do.
Right. So if I've been working in VMware for most of my career and I've got my VCP and this is what I do on a day-to-day basis, the fact that that's been deployed as an Azure service doesn't change any of that. It doesn't change any of my day-to-day. I don't have to update my documentation to show a different run book for being able to spin up new VMs or adjust the size of regular VMs. It just works the same way that it would.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. And anything that you've written from an automation or operations perspective will continue to work in this environment exactly as it did on premises. So no changes whatsoever. Yep.
Excellent. When you're talking to customers and you're going through this process with them and kind of explaining what's going on, are there one or two bullet points that really resonate with them?
Yeah, so I think the big one is it's just VMware. We say that a lot in my job. It's just VMware. So a lot of customers, in fact, most of the customers that I work with are very excited to hear that they can continue to do things the way that they have done them. And then their developers are very interested actually to hear the other side of that coin is it's just Azure, right?
Right.
And so the fact that we've taken the time and the engineering effort that was necessary to integrate these two service platforms together, these two giant pieces of infrastructure, and make them work together is really, really huge. I think in the fact that we have our developers that can bring the modern DevOps profiles that they want to do. They can bring infrastructure as code. They can bring all of the things that they want to do from a modern management perspective and a modern deployment perspective.
And it just works.
And it just works.
Awesome. Yep. Well, thank you for taking the time to come in. This is really cool. I'm excited to be able to talk to customers about it. Let's check in with our community reporter, Amy Rutt, who's been joined by some of our Microsoft Ignite partners.
Hi, this is Amy.